Hey everyone, welcome again to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, where we talk about the Rotten Tomatoes 200 best horror movies of all time. My name is Clay McCormick, and with me as always is Amanda. How are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Follow up from the last episode. I caught the cold.
He could no longer dodge the rain of bullets.
Nope. I couldn't Matrix my way out of this one.
No.
And so my voice is a little weird. I considered saving my voice and just doing the whole thing kind of like this because...
Making this like a weird half ASMR video?
Yeah, because I think it would be very appropriate because the movie we're doing is A Quiet Place, which is number 4 on the Rotten Tomatoes list, which is surprising. We may have some things to talk about there. Have you seen this before?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is I think this is the third time I've watched
really?
it. Yeah, I really like this one.
Have you seen it? Did you see it in theaters?
Yes, I did.
Only the first time or more than once?
Only the first time. Yeah, which we can get more into this kind of thing later, but seeing it in the theater, there were pros and cons and versus watching it at home.
Yes, I agree. This is the second time I've seen this. I liked it a lot the first time I saw it. It's weird. I actually think I liked it a little bit more this time.
Oh, really?
But for different reasons, which we can get into. I do remember this having a fantastic trailer.
Yes.
Which did a lot of heavy lifting for the concept. I mean, the concept is great. And let's play that trailer, and we'll be right back.
Fighting a massive invasion. Around the world. Total devastation.
We can't protect them. We have to protect them.
All right, A Quiet Place from 2018, directed by John Krasinski, starring Emily Blunt, John Krasinski, Millicent Simmons, and Noah Jupe. And Amanda, what happens in this movie?
If they hear you, they hunt you. A family must live in silence to avoid mysterious creatures that hunt by sound. Knowing that even the slightest whisper or footstep can bring death, Evelyn and Lee are determined to find a way to protect their children while desperately searching for a way to fight back. And we would say things you will find in this movie include the always popular questionable parenting.
Running theme.
Doomsday prepper Jim Halpert.
Looks good with a beard.
Monster-assisted suicide.
Good way to go.
And exposition via gratuitous print newspapers.
Yes, there were a lot of newspapers in this movie that takes place well after print was dead.
Yes, yeah. It's like remarkably, out of place in terms of the time period.
And it's, so I think the interesting thing with this movie, for we had just watched a movie last week or so called Hush, which is on Netflix. It's by Mike Flanagan, the guy who did Haunting of Hill House and Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
And it's about a woman who is deaf.
Oh.
And is in her house, and a home invader comes and tries to kill her, etc. And I think there's doing a movie where someone is deaf, and that's like because there's been movies like that before where it's like, oh, you're blind, so then the audience then can see the person who's in the house and stuff.
Yeah.
It's difficult to sell that tension if it's a person who can't hear, because for some reason to me, it seems like they always equate not being able to hear with also yourself being very quiet. And my thought was, wouldn't the person without the hearing make the most noise?
You know, I will push back on that ever so slightly as a minorly hearing impaired person myself. I often like get very like if I have, for instance, a head cold,
Mm-hmm.
I can get very quiet
Sure.
because my ears are blocked up and my already limited hearing means I can't hear anything. So I get really quiet.
Sure.
So I can buy it. I agree that I think these sorts of movies do kind of put a little too much of an emphasis on that being like a common side effect of deafness is that you are all of a sudden a mime.
Right.
Which isn't true. But I can
It's always
I'm willing to kind of let it ride.
Yeah, it's always. I find it strange only because, in this movie specifically, I feel like there's a lot of instances in which the girl who can't hear is
Yeah.
walking and would have no concept of how much noise she's making
Yeah.
while she's walking.
Yeah.
But that's just stupid little thing. I think these sorts of movies work really well.
Mhm.
Whether it's when there's some sort of sense impairment,
Yeah.
it's always like an easy shot for tension, and I think this movie is very well done as far as that goes.
Yeah, and I think they do a good job of not taking too much advantage of the very, very quiet soundtrack, and there's not too many jump scares. There's a few,
Yeah.
but I don't think that there's so many that it becomes like cheesy or gratuitous.
What I actually kind of like is they do silent jump scares,
Mhm.
where what would generally be a jump scare, they do through the point of view of the girl who can't hear anything.
Yeah.
So they don't do the blant, but the thing still comes out and is like behind her,
Yep.
and it works really well that way.
Yeah.
I think I didn't realize, I said I liked this movie more this time.
Mm-hmm.
I, on first watch, remembering feeling like there was a lot of small things that kind of bothered me about it, as far as like towards the end, as far as how things shake out with the monster and how they kill it and all that kind of stuff. But this time, for some reason, none of that stuff bothered me, because it's just really well put together and is the kind of movie that I really like as far as horror movies go, where there's a certain point where they start rolling a ball down a hill, and it just keeps going and going and going and going.
And that point starts pretty quickly in this movie. Like it's a tight 90 minutes, you know? It's not a long or bloated film. There's sort of that introductory sequence where the youngest child, the little boy, gets the rocket ship. And
Great opening sequence.
Yeah.
Too.
Oh man, like tragic and really gets you emotionally invested in this family that you know nothing about. Like you're never given any.
They don't even say their names.
Yeah, they say it in if you are like me and you have to set subtitles to everything anyway, they say John Krasinski's character name Lee, like in the subtitles at some point. It's like Lee coughs, or like, you know what I mean. He doesn't,
really?
But, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, in the subtitles. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
No, but I was, for all the exposition that were delivered about the world and these monsters and kind of what's happened to the rest of civilization via newspapers just being everywhere in this small town. As much as, that's kind of gratuitous, they don't give you that about the family.
Nope.
Like you're never told, like, how old are the kids?
Yeah.
You can kind of estimate.
Yeah.
But you don't really know.
The weirdest thing about this for me, time-wise, is this takes place in 2020.
Oh, really?
Yeah. On the son who dies, the cross that they put up, it says 2016 to 2020. So the kid was only 4, and they jump forward like 6 months or something like that.
No, they jump forward over a year.
Over a year, yeah. It was like 400-something days.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, the time, I think, I love that the time period they don't belabor.
Yep.
There's very little dialogue.
Yep.
Sign language counts as dialogue, but still, even then, it's not that much dialogue.
Right.
And they do I actually think, I wonder if it was a studio note to put in as much information about the monsters as they did, because those newspapers just seem so, that was the one thing that stood out where I was like, that's kind of late. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's the kind of critique where you say in both film and like writing, you want to trust your audience.
Sure.
Like you want to trust that they are smart enough that they will figure out, these monsters are attracted to sound, and that's why everyone's being really quiet.
Yeah, and that whole setup he had in his I found that whole basement setup fairly hilarious.
The whiteboard is what
The
gets me.
whiteboard where
the
he's
whiteboard
like,
is
what
just
is
like,
their weakness?
Yeah, it's like survival?
Yeah,
Question mark?
Yeah.
Medical supplies. And it's like, really? Did you need to write it down like that?
Weakness underlined twice, but there's nothing leading off of that.
Right, yeah.
And I found his homemade cochlear implant setup very charming. Because it reminded me of like somebody's dad trying to build a cyborg in the basement using only like the tools that, normal household tools and like a book, an Isaac Asimov book or something.
I went to the AC Moore and then I stopped by the Home Depot and this is what I found.
I wish. Excuse me. I wish when he goes to her and he's like, this time I tried stereo parts. I wish she was like, even I know this isn't gonna work. Yeah. This isn't how these things work.
She kind of is like that though. She just says it in fewer words. Yeah. Which
there's a reason that they didn't do this before when stereos existed.
Yes, we've had stereos much longer than we've had these high-tech cochlear implants. But
it is very charming. It's very endearing that he does it too, and it makes me hate that girl.
Really?
Yeah. Because first of all, she gets her brother killed.
Does she though?
Inadvertently.
She doesn't know that he took the batteries. And I would argue this goes to our point of questionable parenting.
Yes.
Which is those two adult people walk out of that pharmacy at the beginning or pharmacy or general store at the beginning of the movie without checking for any of their, they've got the boy, the middle child who's sick. They've got him. And they just like completely leave the other two.
Yeah,
like,
they just let them follow behind. That's not. Yeah, that is definitely not the best way to do it.
Yeah, they are the adults in this scenario.
Yeah, you should. I would think you'd have one go for. Well, we don't have to get into that, but I don't know. I kind of thought she was kind of a jerk to everybody.
She's like a preteen girl though.
That's true.
That's your job.
Yeah, I guess being a preteen girl and being deaf in a world full of sound monsters is probably going to put you on edge, I guess.
Yeah, especially when you're also then the one who's like, Dad, take me with you. I am brave and I want to learn how to do these things. And he's like, no, little lady. You got to stay home and help your mother.
That was oddly, that was a strange beat. That he would actively stop her from coming along when the kid clearly didn't want to go.
Yeah, that poor little boy is like completely traumatized. And anyway. That's something that like I said, this is the third time I've watched this movie, and I still am not clear on what the motivation is there, like why he's so adamant, and it's I feels a little bit like a missed opportunity because when he and the son are having that conversation by the waterfall, the son asks him, "Why won't you let her come? She thinks you don't love her. Like why?" He flat out asks him, "Why not?"
Yeah.
And John Krasinski's character, Lee, he doesn't really answer it.
Right.
And I feel like he could have said something. Like they could have given him some even small line where
what I liked about that scene, and to jump back to what you're saying, I think if I had to guess, it feels very script motivated to me. Because of what that scene is at the water with the waterfall, him showing that loud noises don't attract the things. You need to bring the kid who can hear. So, you know what I mean? So it's like that's a difficult scene to do if the person you're telling it to can't hear anyway.
That's true. That's a really good point.
And what I actually did like about that scene, it was a good scene in general, but one of the tiny things I liked about it is it kind of subtly subverts something that I really don't like generally, which is, I'm not saying, I get, it wasn't her fault that the brother got killed. But a lot of times in shows and movies like this, when it's clearly the person's fault, they still have a scene where they're like, it wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, yeah, it was your fault. Your actions directly caused this person's death. Right. They do that in The Walking Dead all the time. It drives me nuts.
Oh, God, I can only imagine.
But what I liked about this is he goes, the kid's like, do you blame her for the death? And he kind of pauses and he doesn't immediately say no.
Yeah.
He just kind of says, it was nobody's fault. Like, so he probably does a little bit.
Well, I think kind of the deep down, like the truth of it is that it was a little bit other than that the son who was sick. It was a little bit everybody's fault.
Yeah, it was kind of everybody's fault.
And like if it's everybody's fault, it's nobody's fault. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's more of that kind of vibe.
I do. I just really liked the ambiguity of his response and
Yes.
it not being just a comforting, oh, it was nobody's fault.
Yeah.
There's definitely some conflict going on there, which I
Well,
like.
yeah, and I think it's much more. I mean, obviously, we can only speculate on, whether or not that's a realistic kind of behavior and reaction in a
Mhm.
world like that. But if you're kind of following the logic of these monsters kind of came out of nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
they've probably killed, billions of people at that point.
Yeah, enough people where society doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that means that for them, it's probably friends, family members, neighbors. They've watched so many, everybody else that they know and love, they've watched them all die.
Mm-hmm.
And they've watched all of civilization collapse around them. And so, yeah, you're at that point, you're going to be either you're going to give up or you're going to be in survival mode, which necessitates a certain level of like pragmatism and almost coldness. And I think John Krasinski's character does a great job of that.
Yeah.
Where he is that willing, he's not just like, oh, no, of course not. No. Yeah, it's not your fault at all. No,
Right.
I don't want you to think that. It's just sort of like, well, yeah, it is a little bit. Like everybody needs to do better. We all need to work harder to stay safe.
Right. I think you can draw a fairly direct, I would say you can draw a fairly direct line from the death of the son to how many fail-safes they have in place at the place they are now.
Which is funny because I still feel like they could have more.
Probably, yeah.
Like it is a little bit like, okay, I think it's safe to assume this has been going on for a minimum of 2 years.
At least.
Yeah, because by the time we see them on day 89 or whatever, they're pretty well established. Like they've got a pretty, despite the little boy's death, which is kind of a fluke in a weird way. They've got a pretty good system down. They've got the sand all laid out. They're all
That must have taken forever.
right.
Where'd they get that sand from? That's leading all the way from the house down across the bridge. That's a lot of sand.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things in this movie. If you want to start getting real nitpicky about like, where did they get these things? How do they know how to do all of these things?
Right.
Like that's probably the stuff when you said the first time you watched this, you liked it, but you had problems with certain things. I'm guessing those were kind of the things where it's just like, oh, okay, so he's like an electrical engineer, plumber, farmer, and she's a doctor, teacher, like weapons specialist.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of stuff you can learn on the fly. I do remember, and this time I did chuckle at this time too, how she gives birth to that baby in about 45 seconds.
I mean,
maybe stress does that. I don't know.
also, when you've had multiple children, each labor and delivery supposedly gets easier.
Oh, yeah. You just pop them right out.
I mean, yeah, right? Isn't that how it works?
I think so.
Well, I think that for me, the thing is that, she only screams like once.
Yes. Yeah.
That for me is the...
Yeah.
But anyway, we're kind of jumping around. So I just wanted to say that, like, I think this is one of the most beautifully shot
Yeah, it looks great.
movies
Looks really
that
nice.
we've watched, like from the Real Ripe and Real Rotten episodes we've done, and then this, and like, we've done a lot of Wes Craven in the last couple months, where we've all, with our friend Wes,
lighting.
talked about how it's visually, he's not aesthetically a great director, so this was a breath of fresh air in regards to that, I think, where it's just
definitely
like moody and gorgeous, and there's tons of natural beauty, and I think the scary moments are really well done.
A lot of it takes place during the day too.
Mm.
And we on the last one we talked about how in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, a lot of that takes place in the day, and it doesn't really work. This one they managed to make the daytime fairly scary.
Yeah.
It works on kind of the same mechanics of like a zombie movie. In terms of like, you never know when they're gonna come out. It usually one of them brings another one, so there's like a swarming factor involved. Post-apocalyptic stuff, but this has a very clear. It's just a very like you said, it's very tight. It's very well crafted, where they give you the first opening scene gives you an introduction to the world.
Yep.
An introduction to the monster, and a point of trauma for the family.
Yeah.
And then for the next like 30 minutes, because the monster doesn't show up again for like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And from that point on, it's just like world building. And it's really,
Yeah.
really well done world building.
Yeah, because it's a very limited and specific world.
Right.
It's their farm in the woods immediately around it.
Mhm.
And something I find interesting about this movie that I actually kind of sometimes go back and forth. I think I love it. I worried a little bit that it was a little too neat and tidy. Where in that 30-minute period of relative peace,
Mm-hmm.
you as a viewer are introduced to literally every set piece, item,
Sure.
location, like
Yeah.
every element, like everything that is going to be important in the final kind of climactic night.
Mm-hmm.
The little boy is sitting and playing in the truck. He's up on top of the grain silo. The basement and the mother, doing the laundry and the nail getting pulled up.
Right.
And, it's very thorough.
Yeah.
And everything is like everything that feels like Chekhov's gun
Oh, yes.
is
Yeah.
Chekhov's gun and is used to like its utmost, which
Chekhov's
is
checklist at that point.
yeah, really. It's
Yeah.
like his entire armory. I think in the end I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it like we said, it's very like it's a tight movie. There's kind of no spare parts. Nothing really goes to waste. Everything feels like it has a purpose and a place.
Right.
I do wonder if like I'm sure there were deleted scenes. I wonder what those deleted scenes were.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I'd probably say I bet there's more middle of the movie stuff out there somewhere. Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Pretty much everything short of that Monopoly board that they're playing with ends up factoring into the story in some way. And I think part of what makes it work so well is it has a really firm grasp on the environment. And it's something I talk about a lot on these shows that I feel like movies really need to have a sense of what the scope of their environment is. And I don't
Yeah.
mean just like the physical environment, but just like how far does the world of this story expand? You know, like if you're at Crystal Lake and you're fighting Jason,
Yeah.
the cops don't show up,
Yeah.
because that brings too many questions. And those are questions that, sure, if it was the real world, those questions would exist, but that's not what you're doing in this story,
Right. You're trying to tell a specific story.
Right.
And you need to set limits.
Yeah. And I think they do that really well here. Kind of by the nature of the concept where there's not really a lot of people around anyway, but they keep it so focused in this one location that you don't really have a lot of time to think about what's going on in like New York, or like what's the I think that's another reason why I don't like the papers, because the papers give you a little bit too much outside information.
Yeah.
Like when there's one of them that says like, governments are toppling. They can't be shot and they can't be blown up. It's like,
Right.
okay, well, clearly they've been trying to fight them. How come at no point they figured out that they were sound? You could use like a sound weapon on them. It's like that kind of stuff where it's once you expand past where the limits of your story should be, you start asking how come questions.
Right.
And I try not to do that because a lot of people do that, and I don't think it's necessarily a fair way to judge a story.
I agree, and I don't think it's a productive way to judge
because you could always do so. How come they didn't
yeah.
run out the front door? I mean, sure, yes, you could
Yeah.
have done that. How come they didn't run upstairs? Well, that is something you could have done. It's just not what they do.
Right. Yeah. There are choices made to tell a specific story.
Mhm.
So I'm dying to ask you.
Yeah.
What do you think about the monster and the monster design? It's the way it looks, the way it functions. Do you like that? Are you a fan of this one, or are you?
I like the head thing.
Yeah.
Like that kind of opens up and you can see the sort of like ear, I guess.
Yeah.
You call it.
The sort of segmentation of those like outer plates.
Yeah,
then
that was
sort
cool.
of- yeah.
The rest of it is, I don't know, feels a little stock to me.
Yeah.
Big long. They look kind of like mini Cloverfield monsters.
Yeah, they look like a mix between that and I cannot for the life of me remember if Stranger Things was already out at this point.
Yes, I actually wrote that in my notes. Yes,
yeah,
it looks just like a Stranger Things
Yeah.
monster. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this was before Stranger Things.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I think it was. But yeah, it does now feel like a Stranger Things type monster. But it's got the cool head thing, which is neat.
Yeah, and I appreciate that they don't show it very clearly for a while.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you get that first sort of very quick glimpse of it when it kills the little boy. And then you kind of get an arm that comes out of the corn and smashes a raccoon.
Yep.
But you don't see the full thing for a while. And then when you do, as usual, as it is with these things, they're always a little less scary.
Yeah.
When you finally get the full effect.
Do you think they show too much of it?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I wish they dialed it back, like, especially towards the end. I wish they kind of, like, withheld it, or at least put it in shadow, or sort of obscured it in some way, because honestly, I think one of the scariest sights in that movie is when Emily Blunt's in the basement and it's filling up with water, and she wakes up and realizes, like, she has to get the baby and the things in the basement with her, and it just kind of folds in on itself and then glides under the water and is gone.
Yeah.
Like, that was a great scene.
And then the head comes up in front of the baby bassinet thing.
Yeah,
that was really good.
It's really, and I think part of it's because, yes, you're seeing the creature and its body, but you're not getting this, like, full unobstructed view of it. It's sort of curved in on itself. It's in a dark corner. It sort of just, like, sinks into the water. I thought that was really brilliant.
Yeah. It would have been interesting if they had used the segmentation of the head a little bit differently. Like, maybe like it is kind of a different color, but if they kept it in the shadows, but like if it opened, you could see, like, I don't know, light isn't the right word, but like if I don't know, I think I agree. I think they could have handled it a little bit more interestingly.
Yeah, a lighter touch on that element would have been nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? I think the thing that really makes it work is, even though, they lay everything out like you were saying, but they kind of, it's almost like a domino set where they really, like, kind of knock everything down.
Yeah.
And that time that they spend world building in the middle is just, it's like, it's like a roller coaster where you don't realize that you've gotten to the top of the roller coaster.
Yeah.
Because they're giving you all this stuff and they're kind of showing you the peaceful elements, but they're not really building a lot of tension during that time. There's the one scene where they knock over the lamp and stuff. But they are being fairly subtle about how they're putting you into position for the big drop.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think the execution is really well done. Like, just seeing the fact that she's pregnant, like, everybody goes, oh,
yeah,
because you know what that means.
Yes,
someone's going to be screaming, possibly more than one person.
Yes,
eventually. It's not like she's not going to have that baby in this movie.
Well, and that's something else I wanted to bring up, because it plays to our, absolute favorite element of these movies, which is questionable parenting. Maybe we should have rephrased this one to questionable parenthood.
Yes.
Like, why are you having the sort of sex that results in pregnancy in this world?
Well, stuff happens.
Yeah, but it didn't have to.
Are you saying but? Is that what you're saying?
Stop it. I guess if you're there, you're there. Like, you gotta move forward, but you think it maybe would have taken
pretty high on the list of
precautions to take. Yeah, and it's, I guess it's just surprising to me how happy about it they are.
Yeah,
like she's sewing little toys and things for the baby mobile that is gonna hang over the baby box.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it does allow for fun stuff like that, like the
baby box,
the mobile that's made out of the squishy things, and the weird, like, anti-noise coffin that they build for it.
Like, that kid, that baby, when it grows up, is gonna have so many issues.
Oh yeah,
because they talk all the time about how infants need, like, physical touch and contact and all of this stuff, and it's like, that baby is gonna live in a box until it's like 2.
Oh yeah, no, most of the time,
tiny little oxygen mask.
It's gonna spend, and I hope they have a lot of those oxygen tanks.
Yeah.
You know what? Now that I think about it, I think these people are just dumb. Because, like, earlier on in the movie, the first time, it's after the baby's born. They rush the baby down into the area so they can put him in the box.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim lights
Lee. His
lights
name
a
is Lee
lighter.
in this one.
Is it Lee?
Yeah.
He lights a lighter and then immediately turns on an oxygen tank. And I was like, dude, you're going to blow yourself up.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that he rushes her and the baby into the basement, covers the thing, and she's like, "Where's the kids?" And he's like, "I don't know. They're outside. They're probably fine. They know what to do."
Well, and then they're down there and they're saying, "It worked.
Yeah.
Our soundproofing worked." Which is like, all right, take the baby out of the box.
Yes. Didn't work that well.
I think that's my nitpicky thing about this movie is just the sort of, the breakdown at that point where it's like you've set up these very stringent rules about how even the smallest amount of sound is going to bring doom and death upon you.
Right.
And then I don't want to say they abandon it, but at that point they definitely loosen those rules a little bit.
And we were talking about that last night when we were watching it. It's movies that do this, and they do the same thing in the other movie we were watching, Hush, where it's like you kind of rely on your audience to get to the point where if the movie is going well, you can loosen up some of those rules a little bit, and no one will really care because it's just going and they're along for the ride.
Yeah.
So you don't have time or the inclination to think about the consequences of a oxygen-filled baby box or whatever. You're just like, oh no, that's where the baby is. The monster is going to get the baby.
Right. You're so engrossed in like the tension and the action of and I'm definitely like, I'm searching for things to kind of criticize about this movie because I really love this movie. I actually think it is a really, really well done movie.
Like the thing I was thinking towards the end was theoretically based on the way that the monsters work with the sound and stuff, and you can't make a noise. Anytime a monster attacks, you would think would bring more monsters.
Yeah.
But there's really only one at a time. So like at the end when he's in the house and he's like smashing everything in the house.
Yeah, you'd think a bunch of other monsters would show up and be like, hi.
Yeah.
But
at that point, you got to end your movie. So
right.
More than one of those things. One is tough enough.
Yeah.
More than one is impossible.
Yeah.
Are you like me really happy that they didn't beat the monster with a song?
Yes.
I think the first time I saw it, I was kind of thinking like they're gonna play like
that song she's listening to on her headphones with when they're dancing in the basement.
Neil Young blows up the monsters. Or I was thinking like they're gonna play Heat of the Moment by Asia or something, and all the monsters are gonna explode.
That would be the 80s version of this movie. Like if this movie had come out.
Yeah, it's like
it would have been.
I'm surprised if they hadn't gone with the person who was deaf. I guarantee you would have been like, one of the kids has a Walkman that he loves.
Yeah.
And then like decides to plug the Walkman into the PA speakers. And they're like, oh no, Man-O-War, and then everybody blows up.
Man-O-War. Oh my God.
I think they do a good job of doing the. I think it takes the girl a little bit too long to figure out that what's going on. But
I agreed with that at first, and then when I rewatched it this time, I realized that the first couple times it happens, or at least the first time it happens, she doesn't even realize one of the monsters is nearby.
Right.
So I kind of give her a pass on that one. She thinks it's just my dad's shitty craftsmanship, like hurting my head.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll give that one. I'll give that one a pass.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite scene? Because I very much do.
I think that the first, or I should say the attack scene that sets everything off is really great, where she steps on the nail up through the point where she, is finally screams.
Yeah,
like that. I mean, it's just like a perfect story. It's a really well set up pile of shit to deal with in this situation, where it's like she steps on this thing, her water breaks. She's in labor, trying not to scream.
Yep.
She's trying to find a place to hide. It's just a really well done. She's all by herself. There's nobody to help her. I thought that was really well done. I also did really like the water filling up in the basement scene. Yeah. I thought that was really good.
Yeah. As somebody who has recently like broken a toe, her stepping on that nail, I was just like,
and she goes, God. All the way in, too.
Oh, yeah. All the way.
It's like you think like once that hits, you kind of like react.
You jerk away. Nope.
Full weight.
Nope.
Boom.
Because I think she's just so frantic. It's like, gotta go.
The monster doesn't get her tetanus will.
Yeah. Ooh. So my favorite scene is kind of one of the ones that's outside of the main action. It's when John Krasinski and the son are walking through the woods.
Oh, yeah.
And they come across the old man.
Yeah, that's good.
That scene is so good. Like, I just think it's such a great, like, that scene, even in a different horror movie, would work so well.
Yeah.
Because, like, you're kind of, the camera's focused on the son. And as he's walking, you just, if I remember correctly, there's not really a music cue to it even. You just see the old man, like, out of focus just as he's walking past, and he bumps into the dad's backpack.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, the whole setup from that moment to the end, I think it's just, like, really, really well done. And I think it's a really interesting scene thematically because it foreshadows Lee's suicide. And shows the different, it sets it up that that's something you can do when you're desperate. That it is this sort of like kamikaze option.
Right.
But I think him turning it into an act, like, I guess the old man kind of does, it's kind of an act of love from him too.
Yeah.
It's like in this really horrible world, it's a way of like showing your devotion to somebody.
Klingons would do very poorly in this world because every time a Klingon dies, they do a Klingon death yell.
Oh.
So they would all die very fast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was an interesting bit of crossover trivia I never would have thought of.
Well, that's what I'm here for. Speaking of the music, I think that I actually wasn't paying attention to the music too much, and I should have because I like to talk about it. But I think that means that they were using it in a very good manner because a lot of times in these movies, the music does a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. I'm trying to remember. There was definitely one we spoke about where it was like the music did a ton of work. Yeah,
and it also, like, if you've got something like Halloween or something that has a really identifiable score that's doing a lot of work for you. Like I Halloween is fine.
Yeah.
I think the music in Halloween does like 90% of the work for that movie.
Yeah.
Personally. But the music it can be used in a much more negative or lazy way.
Yeah, I think lazy is the problem that people really have.
Yeah, where it's like that's when you've got these big scare chords for all your jump scares, and the music is telling you how to feel, which is, kind of lazy storytelling. This one, they kind of dial back on it and play more into the silence of the situation, and I think it works really well.
Yeah, I agree. And then speaking of the silence, so when we started talking about this, I mentioned that I've seen this in the theater and then at home.
Oh, I did want to talk about that.
Yeah. So seeing it in the theater was, at least in my opinion, awesome because seeing a movie like this on the big screen and having the like movie theater speakers when there is sound, really, really adds to it. And the day I went to see it, we must have, I don't know if it was just we got a really good crowd or something, but in terms of the noises from the people around you, you could have heard a pin drop.
Yeah.
That whole movie, like everyone was riveted. Like nobody was like shifting around in their seat. Nobody's like crinkling their popcorn bag. Like everyone was making a concentrated effort to stay quiet in the quiet moments. The problem with it is that there are other movies going on in the theaters next to you.
Yeah.
So you've got like the Avengers like booming through the wall, and it's this very quiet, tense moment. It's just like, oh, come on.
Yeah, I remember at the time when I did go to see it, I was getting over a cough at the time.
Oh, no.
I had already bought my tickets, and I was like, I just need to be able to hang on because I'm not. So I was there kind of going, and then as soon as something happened, I was like, blah, blah. But I felt the same way. Usually I get popcorn when I go to the movies, and I either didn't or I ate it incredibly slowly.
Yeah,
I was like
one kernel at a time.
Like I'm playing Operation, trying not to touch the bag when I reach in.
Yes.
But yeah, I think seeing it in the theater and seeing it at home allowed me to kind of experience it in two different ways. I think viscerally it works a lot better in the theater. because you're at home. This, like you're saying, the sound design of it doesn't work quite as well.
Yeah, unless you're one of those people who has like a crazy awesome surround
Yeah.
sound system set up.
And even so, it's like, you got lights on in another room, and if you're like me, you got a dog who's bothering you, jangling his chain around and stuff,
making the most
pausing
depressed
it,
face possible. at
taking
you.
bathroom breaks and stuff, and snack breaks or whatever.
Yeah.
So like from a visceral experience standpoint, I think it probably benefits much more from the theater.
Yeah.
But what I liked more about it this time is it allowed me to kind of look at it a little bit more structurally.
Yeah.
And just see how they kind of execute everything. And this movie has one thing it has to do, and it does it really well.
What's that one thing?
It's just they have to, the concept of everybody has to be quiet because the sound brings monsters.
Yes.
It's the only thing they have to do.
Yeah.
They build the whole world around that concept. And for the most part, I think they pull it off pretty well.
Yeah, I think it succeeds. I really do.
Have you ever seen The Purge?
No.
The Purge is a good example of a movie like that, where it's the scope is very small. It's a big idea where the more you think about it, the more you're trying to extrapolate it out and be like, well, the Purge is you murder people, and what happens but that's not the point.
Yeah.
It's focused on one house, and they do a pretty good job in that movie of keeping you in this isolated location, just sort of like leaning into the concept.
Yeah.
I don't know why that made me think of it, but
no, I think it's definitely a similar idea.
Is
where
it?
It's like you have to set those boundaries for your world, like we were saying earlier, and then just really stay within them.
Yeah. There was a lot of movies like this that came out in a short period of time too.
Yeah, I feel like this was very much I don't know if I want to say this one kind of kicked off that trend. Around that when did this come out?
2018.
2018.
Yeah, not as long ago as I thought.
No, me either.
Yeah.
I was really gonna say 2016.
That's what I was thinking too.
Oh man, time is weird. Did you ever watch Bird Box?
No, I was kind of interested in it, and then I feel like people were making fun of it more than they were talking about it. So.
Yeah, well, I think the internet got stupid about doing the Bird Box challenge, where people were putting on blindfolds and trying to make their way around.
Sure.
Blindfolded, because the internet is dumb.
Yeah.
Thanks
for listening to this on the internet, by the way.
Yeah, we love you guys. I think, not to get too off topic, but I hesitated to watch Bird Box because I felt like it was very derivative of this movie.
Sure.
And I don't know how true that is. If it was, maybe some sort of crazy coincidence.
Like a Deep Impact Armageddon situation.
Yeah. But it's not as bad as people made it sound, but it's not as good as this.
Yeah.
Like, and again, I think it's a testament to just how well crafted this movie is. Like, that's the word that this movie keeps making me think of.
Yeah.
That it's very intentional and very like crafted very specifically. Like, there are specific choices and specific set pieces and specific things, and everything is there for a reason. Yeah.
And I believe I think it's John Krasinski's first movie he directed.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah. This is when we went from Jim Halpert to all of a sudden like weirdly attractive buff John Krasinski.
That's what a beard will do for you.
I guess so.
Great first movie.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not. I'm finding it interesting how these people who are known primarily for comedy end up breaking out through horror.
Yeah, that's a
him
good point.
And Jordan
yeah.
Peele
yeah.
and there was a couple other guys who have. Oh, Danny McBride wrote Halloween, the last Halloween movie.
Did he really?
Yeah, and the guy who directed it is the guy who directs all Danny McBride stuff.
Huh.
So clearly those guys all like that stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more secret like horror sci-fi nerds in Hollywood than like Christian Bale. I think Christian Bale is a secret sci-fi nerd.
Oh, I'm sure.
If you look at his filmography, he's been in a lot of weird sci-fi movies.
Yeah, no, he's a weird dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one came out. That movie Hush that we watched was I think maybe like 2015 or so.
Okay.
There's a great movie that came out around the same time as this one called Don't Breathe, which is kind of like A Quiet Place, except it's about 5 robbers who try to break into this guy's house and steal shit, but he's blind.
Oh.
But he's also like a retired Marine. He's essentially like blind Rambo.
Yeah, and isn't he like superpowered hearing so he can like...
Yeah, he's not quite Daredevil, but it's one of those movies where they have to be quiet. See, that's the thing that I found interesting about when you take these, sensory deprivation movies.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the blind ones tend to work a little better because the audience is kind of in on it a little bit, where it's like there's one person who can't see anything.
Yep.
There's one person who's trying to avoid being seen, but the audience can see everything.
And it puts the audience in a position of power, which is like, in a storytelling sense, it makes you feel invested as an audience person.
And I think there's a little bit more control's not the word. I think it's a little bit easier to grasp onto what is or isn't going to cross the line of, oh, he sees you, oh, he doesn't. Because, I think if you get into stuff like sound, if it's a sound activated monster or whatever, you're thinking like, well, how much sound? Does walking on leaves do it? Does, if you jangle your bag too loud, do it? If, does this sound do it? Does that, what's the threshold here? But if it's something that is more visual, which is like, obviously, if you make a sound, that person's going to hear. It's one of those things where it feels like it's a little bit easier to understand what the stakes are.
Right. Well, because you either can see something or you can't.
Right.
That's really it.
Right.
Fundamentally, those are your options. There's not a lot of levels in between in these sorts of movies, at least. Whereas the like auditory issues open up a lot more. Because like I said, I myself am very very hard of hearing.
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. If you ever notice that I try to keep everybody on my left, it's because my left ear is my good ear.
Okay.
I actually have a really dumb story. When my husband and I started dating, he, trying to be a gentleman, would always try to walk on the street side of the sidewalk. And me, being a belligerent deaf person, would just switch on him. Like, I would just cross over behind him, and then he would do the same thing to me. So for the first, 4 weeks we were dating, we just circled each other on the sidewalk constantly. Like
dogs.
Yeah. Until I finally just said to him, look, I have partial hearing in my right ear. If you want to talk to me while we're together, you need to be on my left. And he was like, well, that explains everything.
Yeah, that's really funny.
But so this is kind of a perfect illustration of what I was going to get at before I went on this awful tangent.
That's what my shows are, is just
awful tangents. Yeah. Awful tangents with Clay and Amanda. I can move.
Listen to the Batman show. We talked about the episode for 5 minutes.
I love it. I can move through the world and nobody knows that I am hearing impaired.
Sure.
And so, it kind of goes to that. At what level are you at? Like, how much can you hear? How much can you not hear? How much sound triggers this monster? Like, where is the threshold? Where is the line? So I get it why with these sort of, sensory impairment movies, why the visual ones are easier to just sort of dive right into.
Yeah. I'm wondering if they're gonna round everything out and it's gonna be like, okay, so get this. There's a guy, he can't feel anything. Yeah. And his friend can't taste anything.
If you're talking emotionally, that's what most movies are about.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we've already done that. We've been there and we've done
most
that.
Romantic comedies are about someone who can't
There's this guy and he can't feel anything.
There is actually again well, I guess no, he's a horror guy, but I was going to say there is coming out next year a new version of The Invisible Man.
Oh.
By one of the guys who created Saw.
Oh.
And he's also I think he's involved with The Conjuring too.
Oh,
so he's one of those guys.
All right.
It looks
those
pretty
guys.
cool. Yeah. It looks like, again, they kind of have one thing they have to execute, and it looks like they're going to execute as many versions of that thing as they can. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
I don't know. I do know. Because we're wrapping it up. How do you feel about the ending?
The direct ending where they defeat the monster?
Yes, like that whole kind of sequence after. Well, let me start with. I think John Krasinski's death is very well done.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very. I don't know if I want to say earned is the right word, but I think narratively they set it up well that this is the only way to save the kids.
Yeah.
Like I think it's not just like, and then he threw his life away. Like I think it's very purposeful.
If only he was a ventriloquist and he would still be
he
alive
could have
today.
thrown his voice. But I liked that. And then after that, how do you feel about kind of the remainder, that last like 10 minutes of the film where the kids get back into the house?
Yeah.
And
it's fine. You know, it has a nice emotional payoff because the girl gets to see. I don't know how getting to see his workbench proves that he loved her more than the fact that he was constantly trying to fix her ear thing. You know, she goes down, she sees his thing, and she's like, "Oh my God, all of these pieces. He's been working a very long time on this."
Well, I think it's a visual representation of how much he worked on it.
Sure.
Like, because, you know, he was just going down there all the time, and she never got to go down there, and she didn't know what the hell he was doing.
Yeah,
he could have tinkered with it for 5 minutes every other day.
Why wouldn't he let her down there? That was another weird thing where he was keeping her. I don't know if. So I don't mean to sidetrack.
No, let's sidetrack.
I wonder if
awful tangents with Clay and Amanda.
I wonder if part of the reason, you know, you're saying you didn't know why he doesn't take her with him on that thing. I wonder if that, and also the fact that he wouldn't let her in the basement, was specifically to set up this idea that he's keeping her at arm's length.
Yeah.
Which would play into her feeling about how she thinks that he doesn't love her.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I didn't feel like when she got down there was any revelation as to why she couldn't go down there. She would kind of think there would be, but.
So I will credit you with when I brought up why didn't he take her out on the expedition to the waterfall, and you said, well, you know, he brought the son because the son can hear the waterfall and will now understand this concept.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there isn't something along those lines for not letting her in the basement too, because it's full of audio visual equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe because she can't hear, he was concerned that there was a chance she could accidentally switch something on. You know, there could be some sort of feedback thing with her implant and the equipment that's around.
Good point. Yeah.
And she wouldn't even notice it because she can't hear. So maybe it was something like that. But again, it's kind of frustrating that, you know, in a movie that is so tight and so intentional and everything is set up so well, it is a little like those points are a little frustrating to me, where it does make it feel as though it's purely just so she can have this poignant, you know, emotional moment where after he's already died, she realizes like the depth of his love for her.
Yeah. Generally, I wouldn't really care what the answer was.
Yeah.
except that they lean into it a little bit.
Well, yeah, and this movie doesn't give you a lot else to sort of nitpick, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, I like how sparse it is. I like that they don't really tell you anything about the family. They don't really tell you anything about the monsters. Yep. They don't even tell you where it takes place, I don't think.
Yeah, unless there's a hint in one of those many, many newspapers.
Yeah. Yes, there might be. It might say like Chicago Sun-Times on it or something.
The West Virginia Examiner or whatever.
It would be great if he just had like, it was like a Springfield situation where he had like a map of the four states that all touch his state, and it's like Colorado, Maine, Texas, and Kansas or something. But yeah, I think that's one thing where it's like, if that's a character beat you're leaning into, you feel like there should be some payoff to it. But as for the ending, I mean, I feel like they probably did it the best way they could, given like, you got to get out of the movie at that point, and you have to kill one of the monsters.
Yes.
They pay off the ear thing. It's a little bit of a emotional payoff. Thankfully they don't use a pop song to do it. Yeah. And thankfully they don't do a thing where it's like, if she touches the ground, she can feel when they're coming. Thankfully they didn't do that.
Where she becomes an X-Man.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about it?
I agree. I think it's like you said, you've got to get out of the movie somehow, and that's a perfectly serviceable way to do it. I don't know, but there's something about it that just feels a little lackluster to me.
Yeah. Would you have? I remembered it as her implant causing their heads to explode.
Oh wow, I did not remember it as that.
Yeah. Well, because I remembered it that way because I was like, well, I guess that would make more sense than just the mother shoots it.
Yeah.
Because the way it plays out is it's freaking out and she shoots it, blows its head off.
Yeah.
And then they see more of them coming down in the video, and she's like,
Yes.
lock and load. I
right.
would be,
See, I think that's what bothers me.
If they had cut to her being like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. Like, I think for a movie that's so rooted in a version of reality.
Yeah. Because, like, what are they going to do? One at a time, bring him down there and, like, hold on, listen to this, and then I'm going to shoot you. So,
and, like, how many bullets do they have?
Right.
Like, maybe they also have a fucking stockpile of that, the way they seem to have a stockpile of everything else.
Right, yes.
I'd believe it, but it maybe would have helped to have shown that at some point then.
Yeah.
That, like, here is our gun closet, kids. But yeah, I think that's sort of what bothers me about the ending is that it positions Emily Blunt as this, like, she's gonna be like Rambo mom, which I'm not against.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of there for it in concept. I just don't think I'm there for it at the end of this movie when, like, she gave birth like 4 hours ago.
Right. Yeah.
Like, she should be limping around.
Yeah. That's one of those things. I tend to give that stuff a pass a little bit because, like,
she just shot herself up with some
have
like
you seen
pain meds.
Prometheus?
Yes.
One of the big things that everybody yelled at that movie for is the scene where she cuts the alien baby out of herself and then she gets stitched up and then she's out and running around
Jesus
again.
Christ.
It's like, yeah, of course she is.
But
It's not like
also-
she's gonna sit in the corner for the rest of the movie.
But
She's got to keep
also,
moving.
that is like future science, space technology.
Yeah, and that scene was awesome.
I agree. I am not arguing that the scene was awesome, but I think
Stop
that
arguing with me.
you stop arguing with me
I will get Wes back on this show
so that we can both yell at him
Yeah,
instead of
so-
each other.
so we can watch a movie and he can say I didn't really like it.
Yeah, I don't really like this. No, but I think that's kind of a false equivalency when you're talking about like woman in spaceship with advanced technology
yeah.
versus woman in farmhouse,
Yeah.
like where society has collapsed.
Right,
Like
yeah.
the fact that we don't even see her saying, all right, I got to take a bunch of these pills because they're going to
Yeah.
dull the pain. I'm going to take a bunch of these pills because they're going to help prevent infection.
Arguably, the fact that she survives the childbirth is even in question.
Yes, women used to. I mean, unfortunately, women still do die all the time in
Right.
childbirth. But like, yeah, not sanitary conditions.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of blood.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that's the sort of like now she is action woman. Bugs me a little bit at the end.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know. Like, I get what they're doing at the end where it's like, okay, finally we have a way to defeat them. It was sort of indirectly a result of the dad's experiments and stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
it's
he
kinda like
saved us all in the end.
Yeah, it's his final gift or whatever.
yeah.
They have a way to defeat it or whatever. But like, that's when you start extrapolating it out, being like, well, there's like 5 of them running at the house. How powerful is this thing? Are they going to come one at a time into the basement? Are they all going to be affected at the same frequency if they all come into the basement? How many bullets do they have? You know,
it opens up this kind of can of worms in terms of questions. I also think it would have been kind of cool if the daughter had shot it.
Sure, yeah.
Because, I mean, also the other...
She doesn't really do much else, yeah.
I mean, yeah, and it kind of sucks because I know you were like, oh, that scene, like earlier on we were talking, you was like, that scene made me hate that daughter. And I actually think she's great.
Yeah.
Like, I think she's a great character. I think the actress does a phenomenal job of that, like, she hits that edge of, like, being, like, a preteen or young teenager who is going to fundamentally feel like an outsider no matter what.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then you add in the fact that she's the only deaf one.
Yeah.
And so she is just naturally limited and more vulnerable in this world where, like, being able to hear the approach of these things or hear any sound you make is so important. She is at a disadvantage from everybody else.
Yeah.
And then you add to that, like, her dad's treating her like she's incapable. Her mom is just sort of, you know, being like, oh, honey, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's the right amount of teen girl angst, in my opinion, where you add that to her obvious guilt about her younger brother. And
Right.
I like it. I think she's a complicated character, and I like it.
I think that's, I agree with you. I think that's a little bit of what I'm missing from her, though, is when I said that it seems like the person who can't hear is going to be has potentially to be louder.
Yeah.
I wish there was a couple scenes where they did something like that, where she makes a noise that she doesn't realize she's making.
Yeah.
And so they're like, like they jump at her. And so that's like pushing her even further back.
You're right. That's a really good point. I feel like that Monopoly scene is sort of a lost opportunity for that.
Yeah.
Where they kind of make it look like, again, like it's both the kids who knock over the lantern. Like, what if it had just been her?
Yeah. Or like if she goes to get something and turns and bumps something and something falls off, she doesn't realize it's happening. I mean, she's
totally
the one who,
innocent.
She's the one who saves the thing from dropping at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But by the same token, I'm glad that they don't give her like a superpower.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they make her. It'd be very easy to make her loss of hearing give her an advantage on the monsters, which it doesn't.
Right.
Right.
It does only through the result of like her dad accidentally putting together these different attempts at making her implant work again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it handles her really well in terms of having like a main character that is like disabled.
Yeah.
Or differently abled, however you want to say it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it handles her really well. Like, she's very normal. She's a normal teenage girl. She's very human. She does some stuff right. She does some stuff very wrong. She can be kind of a jerk, but she shows up and helps when it matters. Like, I think they handle her well.
Yeah. I bet you were talking about deleted scenes. I hope there's one where Jim, she does something and Jim
I like
pulls
how
her
you
aside.
insist on calling him Jim.
It's, a point of connection that I have. Where she does something and then Jim, through sign language, just says like, can you just stop?
Yeah.
Can you think about the situation that we're in right now? I know you're a teenager, but for just a second, there are sound monsters trying to kill us. Give it a rest,
Young
okay?
lady, go to your room.
Yeah.
In sign language.
But yeah, I think maybe if instead of the cocking the shotgun, let's get ready to rumble at the end. If it allowed them to escape somehow, or like there was an escape hatch in the floor that like sent them down into something like that, where it gives them a way to fight them and allows them to survive.
Right.
But doesn't necessarily put them in the situation where it's like the next movie, the girl's going to show up with like an X-Men helmet on. And she's going, although I'd be down for that too. Why
it's
not?
just a different movie. It's a very different movie.
Right.
I think that's, I'm actually really glad we talked this out, because I think that is what hits me wrong about the ending, where it is this like, not that I'm expecting Emily Blunt's character to like collapse to the floor and just sob. She seems like pretty tough overall based on what you see of her throughout the whole movie. But yeah, it's just that sort of almost stereotypical action hero ending.
Sure, yeah.
Where it's like you're like, let's get ready to rock kind of thing. And it's just like, no.
She's all out of gum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to do it for this one. Do you, this is number 4 on the list. How do you feel about that rating? I mean, it's tough because there's 200. It's not like it's a list of 10 movies.
Yeah.
It's 200 movies.
Yeah.
Do you think this could be higher, could be lower, or do you think this is about where it should be?
By higher, you mean closer to number 1?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure I have the scale in the right direction. As much as I love this movie, I think it could be a little lower. I honestly think I would still keep it top 15.
Really?
Yeah, I really do. I really, really do. I think it combines a lot of elements in a fairly original way, as much as we were just talking about all these other movies that sort of have a similar conceit. I do think that it's just so well done, and I think the acting in it is great. I think the world building is excellent. I think it's just an all around great movie to me. But I don't know if I would put it at number 4.
Yeah, I think it's way too high.
Just in terms of like, if we're talking horror movies, there are certain classics that just by their very impact on sort of the zeitgeist and the genre in general.
Yeah, I mean, The Shining was 101.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I forgot how high that, or how low on the list that one was.
Yeah, I think out of 200, I would probably put this somewhere in the middle, I think. Like around like 100.
So you would kind of swap this in The Shining?
Absolutely. If I had to do a one-for-one swap, I wouldn't hesitate.
Yeah, right
yes,
away.
Absolutely.
So who would you recommend this to?
People debating whether or not to start a family, I guess.
Prospective parents.
Yeah.
That's all right. I think I would recommend this movie to people who like post-apocalyptic.
Sure.
Like that whole genre, books, film, whatever. I would recommend this movie to people who are really into John Krasinski, because this is like peak. Like if you want to stare at him, this
keeps
is
his shirt on though.
Yeah, but I mean, doesn't need to take it.
I don't know. He got pretty buff for that Michael Bay movie he did. So
I did not watch. I categorically do not watch Michael Bay movies.
Ooh.
So let's fight.
Welcome to the Rock, Amanda. Yeah, I would definitely recommend this though. I think it's good. I think it's a tough one because it's like I feel like I would absolutely recommend it, but I feel like you need to be in the right atmosphere for it to really work.
Fair.
To get the full experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you can, if this is at like a second run theater or something, or like a repertory theater, or if you've got a particularly big TV in a particularly quiet room,
yeah,
definitely.
It's a good one, and it's like we said, it's a fairly short one. It's 90 minutes.
Yeah, get in and out.
Yeah,
magic number for a horror movie. So next time, so every 5 movies we're gonna take a trip away from the list. Just to mix it up a little bit, because there's a lot of movies on the list that I do want to talk about and that you want to talk about. A lot of movies that are not on the list that I think we would both like to talk about. So the first detour we're going to take is we're going to watch a movie called Starry Eyes.
Starry Eyes.
Yes, which it's been on Netflix for like 8 years.
Huh.
It's very cool. It's very. Do you like Rosemary's Baby?
Yes.
Then you'll probably like Starry Eyes.
All right.
It's a little bit more bloody than that. So, so thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time with Starry Eyes.
Thanks, guys.